Emma had always felt like the world had closed its doors on her. Growing up in foster homes, moving from one cold, unfamiliar place to another, she'd learned to rely only on herself. By the time she turned 20, she had almost perfected the art of invisibility, keeping her head down, staying quiet and avoiding trouble. But life, as it often does, had other plans. After losing her last foster placement due to a minor misunderstanding, Emma found herself with nowhere to go and barely enough money to survive. One chilly morning, she wandered down an old street lined with shuttered shops and abandoned buildings, hoping to find odd jobs or at least some kind of opportunity. That's when she noticed the roar of motorcycles and the smell of gasoline. Across the street, a small garage was buzzing with life. Men in leather jackets leaned over motorcycles, laughing and shouting. A faded sign read, "Hawthorne Custom Garage." Curiosity overcame caution and Emma stepped inside. The moment she did, the sound of engines and clanking metal filled her ears, and the air was thick with oil and exhaust. A tall man with tattoos snaking up his arms looked up from under the hood of a motorcycle. His piercing blue eyes fixed on her, and for a moment, Emma felt frozen, like a deer caught in headlights. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. I'm looking for work," Emma stammered. "I can clean, sweep, run errands, anything." The man studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You'll start Monday, be here at 8. Emma's friends and neighbors had warned her countless times. "Don't go near bikers, they're dangerous," they'd said, but something about the garage felt different. Despite their rough exteriors, the men didn't seem hostile. In fact, there was a strange sense of camaraderie, a rhythm to their chaos that felt oddly inviting. That first week was harder than Emma had imagined. The men worked hard, laughed harder, and sometimes shouted in ways that startled her. But they also shared stories, offered guidance, and even teased her in ways that, surprisingly, made her feel included. She realized quickly that the bikers weren't just a gang of reckless men. They were a close-knit group bound by loyalty and respect, values she had never truly experienced in her life. Yet she couldn't shake the nervous tension that lingered whenever a newcomer walked in or a motorcycle revved too close. Every day, the warnings from the outside world echoed in her mind. Still, she showed up. She cleaned, learned names, learned routines, and started to anticipate what each person needed before they asked. Slowly, the men began to trust her. They allowed her to handle small tasks on her own, and when she succeeded, there was a genuine nod of approval, a language Emma hadn't known she'd been craving. By the end of that first month, Emma was no longer just a girl wandering into a garage. She was part of a rhythm, part of something she didn't fully understand but desperately wanted. And though danger still lingered at the edges, for the first time in her life, she felt safe. Emma's days at Hawthorne's custom garage had become something she looked forward to. The initial tension and fear that had gripped her the moment she walked through the doors had faded, replaced by a sense of belonging she hadn't known existed. The bikers, rough and gruff on the outside, were proving to be a family in every sense, loyal, protective, and unwavering. It was on a late Friday afternoon when everything changed. A new motorcycle had been brought in, a vintage Harley that needed a full engine overhaul. The job was too big for the usual crew, and the garage owner, Dean, handed it to Emma with a half-smile. "Think you're ready for this?" he asked, his tone teasing but challenging. Emma's heart pounded. It was her first real responsibility in the garage, and failure was not an option. She nodded, rolled up her sleeves, and got to work. As she worked, the other bikers watched silently from a distance. There was no mocking, no jeering, just a quiet, encouraging presence that pushed her to focus. Every bolt she tightened and every engine part she adjusted felt like a small victory, and for the first time, she realized she was capable of more than she had ever believed. By the time the sun began to set, the Harley purred like a dream. Dean clapped her on the back with genuine pride. "You've got hands for this, Emma. Hell of a job." The other bikers nodded in agreement, some offering gruff words of approval, others just silent smiles. Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from a profound sense of being seen and valued. Weeks turned into months, and Emma became an integral part of the garage. She learned the names of every biker, their quirks, their favorite drinks, their bad habits. And slowly, the walls she had built around her heart began to crumble. The men shared their own stories of loss and hardship, teaching her that strength didn't always come from muscle and bravado. It came from loyalty, courage, and love. One evening, as the garage emptied and only the sound of engines cooling remained, Dean called her over. He handed her a small leather jacket, worn and soft, embroidered with the garage's emblem. "This is for you," he said simply. "You're one of us now." Emma held the jacket against her chest, the weight of it feeling heavier than leather. It was the weight of acceptance, of belonging, of family. She realized then that she had found something far more valuable than any job or paycheck. She had found a home. That night, as she walked home through the quiet streets, Emma's mind replayed every laugh, every lesson, every gentle tease from her new family. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel abandoned. She felt loved. And in that love, she found strength she never knew existed. The warnings of the outside world faded into distant echoes. The bikers weren't dangerous. They were her family. And Emma finally understood that family wasn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it was forged in the unlikeliest of places, in a greasy garage among roaring motorcycles, and in the hearts of those who had learned to fight for one another. Emma smiled to herself, knowing that whatever life threw at her next, she would face it, not alone, but as part of something bigger, something real, something that at long last she could call home.